Okay, I said I would post a video today about what I thought might be a kind of a plan to try and get us, when I'm talking about the United Kingdom, I mean the United Kingdom out of the pit that we are at the moment. But actually the same principles would apply to other countries in Europe as well. We're reaching a major decision point, and that decision point has got two directions. There's the do nothing option, and then there's the do something option. The do nothing option will, in my opinion, much like Karl Marx and Stalin pushed forward, will result in our country becoming a neutered, communist-esque country that will be a weak part of Europe, one of a number of European countries, all of whom will fall victim to this. It will be run on communist guidelines, which means that there will be no freedom of speech. We will have absolutely no influence on what happens to the country, because it will be driven by European mantra, and they have no love lost for us, and there is no vision. There's no end state, much the same way that Stalin pushed this, much the same way that Mao Zedong pushed it as well, communism. That there is no end state, and none of that left-wing woke mantra has ever turned around and said this is where we want to be in 10 years time or 20 years time, which I believe we need to have a vision and a sight of that and a belief in that. So the do something option, which I'm going to propose, is just an opinion, and I want to express it in a way, in a technical way, because I believe you have to go in relatively hard in order to be able to come up with a solution. This is not the solution. This is a proposed solution. The solution would be to create a strong democracy, British democracy. And as I said, this could be mirrored by other countries in Europe as well. And the way I propose that we do this, there are a number of immediate actions that need to be taken, because otherwise this will never happen. The first one is that the current government need to be removed. And the reason they need to be removed, as opposed to just the Prime Minister change, for example, is because the entire civil service and our public services are pandering to them and victim to them at the moment. So that's the first thing we need to do, is remove the current government. We then need to repeal all our laws, the laws that are currently neutralising our rule of law. So I'm talking about the European Court of Human Rights, other human rights laws that are being used to, again, neutralise our law at the moment. And that includes laws on things like racism and hate speech, and I'll talk about that separately, because the whole thing's got out of control now. We need freedom of speech, not to be imprisoned for hate speech, and most of which isn't hate speech anyway, and it's used as a weapon against people in order to be able to silence them. So that's the next thing that's got to happen. As far as immigration is concerned, we absolutely have to deal with illegal immigration, and I've already proposed a plan previously for that. We need to do the suggestion that Reform have made to detain, deport those people, but I do believe they've only solved part of the problem. The other thing we need to do as part of that is we need to smash the human trafficking business, which is huge, and multi-billion-dollar business, and that can only be done in collaboration with Europe and with the US, and that is the only way that we'll be able to stop that from happening, because that is feeding illegal immigration all over Europe. We then need to have a much stronger carrot and stick approach to the migrant countries. These are the countries that people are coming from. Carrot and stick. They have to agree to take back all their deportees. And if they do and they comply, then we will implement a much more responsible foreign policy with them, which we will manage. So it's not a matter of us sending money to different countries. We send money to different countries, but we are then involved in how that money is spent. The problem at the moment is that we give money out to these countries and it just disappears through corruption. So that's that part. And the last part of that particular bit is the migration policy. The legal migration policy in the UK needs to be completely revamped and reformed so that we actually do attract the right people in. It acts as a repository for genuine asylum seekers who are fleeing, and they would all need to be vetted before they come in. Again, I can discuss that in more detail separately. The next thing that needs to happen is that we need to create an apolitical body within government. So this is not a political party. This is an apolitical body that represents the needs of the nation. And so that political body, slightly akin to what Rupert Lowe is trying to create at the moment, becomes a body, an auditable body that sits within government, and they are responsible for what I would call the National Strategic Plan. And I'll talk about this in a minute. But the National Strategic Plan is managed by these people, and that National Strategic Plan basically describes what we need to do over a series of set targets, and all those people involved in this body, this apolitical body, sit within this in the centre of government, and they act as basically the rain check. Now the political parties can carry on doing what they're doing, and they can decide how these things are going to be achieved. So we decide. This body decides what needs to be done and when, and then the political parties decide how they're going to do it. So that body of people will include members of all the political parties in the UK. It will include economists, proper economists. It will include scholars, academics. And indeed some of the principal commentators that we see on our screens at the moment, those ones that have vision and that have the intellect to be able to carry that forward. So the first thing that needs to be established is a British rule of law. Everybody it complies to it, so it's not affected by affected by European law or international law. It is a British rule of law. Every single creed, culture, and immigrant that comes into this country complies to that law. And if they cannot agree to doing that, then they don't come into this country. And if they commit an offence against any of those laws, they are immediately deported. They're not imprisoned, they're deported out of this country. And that needs to be implemented with an iron fist. And so the police and the such like would need to be configured in that way, and even if necessary our military forces, in order to be able to implement this. Our relationship with Europe needs to be one where the European countries stand on their own feet, as they have done for centuries. So Germany, France, Italy, Spain stand on their own feet as independent countries. At the moment, we're fighting a global battle where we have the East, China and Russia, who are getting stronger and stronger. We have the amorphous mass of the United States of America, who will, if we do not do this, will wash their hands of us. And that relationship, whatever your political bent is at the moment, is vital for our future, whether we like it or not. The National Strategic Plan that I talked about before, this basically will consist of a series of major milestones: the 10-year plan, 20-year plan, 30-year plan, in order to be able to get us to where we want to get to. At each one of those stages, there are a series of milestones that affect every sector within society. So we have a series of targets, technical targets. So, for example, we agree that within 5 years we will achieve net migration in this country. We will have targets like, the average birth rate of British society will be 2.5 children, or whatever it may be, because at the moment we're way below that. Targets like we will reduce crime in the different sectors by 50% in 10 years' time. And these are realistic, achievable targets. And those are specifically designated, specific targets that everybody knows, the whole country knows, and they will be aware of. And the government, in whoever the government is in place, will be held to account for those targets. There will be no budgetary constraint. That is the responsibility of the government to be able to achieve that within the budget that they have. We can have other targets which will include things like limits on taxation, limits on unemployment, on in fact every single area, anything to do with the health service, waiting times, accident levels, all of these kind of things can be clearly defined and designated. Once a strategic plan, which has had input from every single political party, by the way, has been defined, we can then do a series of one of the things I used to do is systems dynamics modeling. Basically, you can do what's called a Monte Carlo simulation of all the different options and all the different outcomes of running a plan like this, and and that will help us identify where all the risks lie, where all the checkpoints lie. Now, I would have hoped that all of the political parties will have done this, but I have no faith in the fact that anyone's done this at the moment, and I have no faith that it can be achieved, which is why I'm suggesting we do this as part of an independent body. And as I said, the government of the day can, in relation to that strategic plan, can achieve that however they see fit. Now, I'm going to leave it at there. There's lots of detail involved in this, and I have absolutely no idea whether it's even vaguely possible, but I do think that we need to make some major rational decisions very, very quickly, otherwise we will be lost. And I do believe that. Yeah, and to the far left, the woke community, if you want to continue to press your ideologies, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to look after minority groups, there's nothing wrong with wanting to look after immigrants, but you cannot do that. You will not be in a position to be able to do that if you do nothing. You will not have the platform from which to do that. You will lose your free speech, which you have now. You will lose your free speech. And you will not be able to implement, and I'm specifically talking about the younger generation. If we do nothing, you will lose all of that, and your lack of identity that you're searching for will actually, it'll be worse. Economically, the dignity of the British people, the prosperity of the British people will die if we don't do something, and this is why I'm proposing what I'm proposing. Sorry, there is one last point I wanted to make, and that's about Islam, about Islamification of the UK and indeed for most of Europe. There is an Islamic strategy going on here, which has been slightly tempered down by places like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the such like, where there is a more softly approach, and they are exploiting the weaknesses that we have at the moment. But this is a positive effort. We have a number of Muslim people now in the country, politically motivated Muslim people. I'm not going to name any names, but you know who they are. They have the ability through Islam to do something called taqiyya. Taqiyya is basically the ability that it allows these people to lie in order to push the Islamic mantra. So they can lie, it doesn't matter what position they're in, what positions of responsibility, and they can lie. I've already talked about the methods of extremism from the Muslim community specifically. And I'm also conscious of the fact that I know an awful lot of Muslim people. 70-80% of the Muslims in this country come to this country because they want to enjoy the freedoms. They want to be British. I heard a lovely term not so long ago from a very good friend of mine called coconut. It's not racist at all. In very simple terms, it means brown on the outside, white on the inside. Most of the Muslims in this country are like that. That's what they want. They want to be part of British society. And we need to be very careful over the next couple of years that that we do not fall victim to Islamification, because if we do, then our country is definitely lost. So we need, and again, the National Strategic Plan will have a series of milestones that will need to be achieved in order to be able to deal with Islamification on to basically exploit the good bits, and then to eradicate the bad bits. And there are lots of bad bits going on at the moment.